I don't like this and I don't like that. I work with a lot of people coming out of traditional church environments, and they kind of go to emergent church and home church and organic church and all this stuff. But normally after 2 or 3 years, they'll say, well, you know, I just miss this and I miss that, and this is, you know, I don't find any release. And I'll say things to them like, was anybody stopping you from loving any people? No. But I just don't have any experience. What they're saying is that they miss all that we're here to tell you what to do thing. And I say, well, somebody said this, well, you know, I just miss the corporate worship so much and the whole worship experience, and I play keyboard and I'm a worship leader and I don't have that anymore. I said, do you worship at home? Well, no. Is anybody stopping you from playing the piano at home? No. So what you're telling me is you're addicted to having 200 people captive to your gift. It's got nothing to do with worship at all. Mm. You miss the psychic adrenaline buzz that comes from the presence of the Lord, because there's really no problem here with worship. You got all day to worship. Well, she never talked to me again, as you might expect. Literally true. Never did.
I think with that last week, you're the best one-time speaker.
Yeah. I'm called the one-time wonder. This is 2, so you guys have grace.
Grace to move on.
Grace to move on. You will never truly understand adversity until you understand which parts of it God permitted in order to gain enough access to you because he couldn't any other way. A gentleman by the name of Paul Bilheimer wrote a book, he's passed away now, excellent father in the faith, called Don't Waste Your Sorrows. How does this relate to bitterness? See, when I come into adversity or difficulty, we need to understand, do we really believe Romans 8:28 or not? All things work together for good for those that are called in Christ Jesus, called according to good. Well, you know, that's great in Sunday school, but when I'm getting trampled on, it's not so good. It's not the first one I'm going to put on my fridge. But obviously God has redemptive purpose in everything. So if I'm going through a season of relational, circumstantial adversity, part of getting over bitterness is saying, Lord, there is something in me you are after. I am not saying that you blindly submit yourself to abuse. That's another whole conversation. I'm just trying to throw out some wisdom keys for dealing with bitterness. A couple more. And we'll let you guys comment on this. The enemy will appeal to our fear of rejection in order to keep us attached to people who will trade liking you in exchange for using you. The enemy will use our fear of rejection to keep us attached to people, places, circumstances, things who promise to like us as long as we allow them to use us. So our fear of rejection and all the social and psychological implications of being different causes us to be complicit in a platform that is an opportunity for bitterness. Sometimes these things aren't specifically taught, but it's in the air. You can feel it. They're the unspoken expectations and the social dynamics in any group. We will like you, but you must blah, 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 blah. You must serve here, you must do this, you must come to the prayer meeting at 5 o'clock, you must tithe, the whole you must list. If you do all the you musts, we'll like you. how important is it for us that the Lord heals us so deeply in our sense of daughterhood or sonship with Him that we no longer live for the affirmation. I don't get a sense of well-being from what other people are going to provide for me. Because I don't care if it's a church, a marriage, a job, whatever. That's a formula for disaster. Is it any wonder that our churches blow out when there's all these unarticulated relational expectations going on? All these things, you know, and you can feel them, and it's like, what was that, and what was this, and, well, that hurt, but if I say something, will I that? And then will it mean, and in my church background, it was, sing, don't cause trouble, pay your tithe, and if you screw up, we'll talk to you. So there was never anything investment on the investment side. So the only time you ever heard from anybody is when there was a problem. So, you know, you dreaded the phone ringing, or you dreaded the knock on the door because you know it was another trip to the principal's office. Just not a very, very warm dynamic. Making any sense? Anybody comment? And then we'll do a couple more and then we'll move on. Those who want an argument never want an answer. Don't waste your time. Don't delay the progress of a teachable person arguing with the stubbornness of an ignorant one. Mm-hmm. If somebody is just going to argue with you, it doesn't. Having better insight than somebody is not the 10th fruit of the Spirit. Anybody can argue any point about anything from any verse, and there are some people that just want a fight. And they're so broken in their own psychology that they can't feel good about themselves unless they're right. And the church is full of people like that. Full of leaders like that. How do you know? Because the first time you say no to the leader, they give you the cold shoulder. You're on the suspicion list. So it's not like a healthy teacher likes a question because that means somebody is thinking. You shouldn't be put off by a question or a question that has a different perspective or a disagreement. It's like, let's go. Somebody's actually listening to what I'm saying. They're actually synthesizing it. They're actually forming their what? Their own thought. What a radical proposition.
Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah, well, in most churches I've been, no you're not. I'm not talking about coming up with fancy doctrines, undoing the Apostles' Creed, rewiring the Trinity. I'm not talking about that. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, yeah, that's a great perspective, but you know, brother, you got perspective too. What do you think about it? You know, what's been your life journey on that point? Well, this is how it's worked out for me. There are some things that are personalized that way. Sure, some things are absolute. And there's a lot of things, particularly if you're going to go down the road of typology. You already start, you know, painting pictures from the Old Testament. Well, this means that and this means that. Hey, you know what? That's a pretty broad universe. We want to be tolerant with one another and those sort of things. A couple more. Anybody got a comment, a question? I'll give you a couple more. Your progress in freedom cannot be derailed unless you stop to try to explain an unnecessary accusation to unnecessary people. If I'm always trying to explain myself.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. Our progress in freedom cannot be derailed unless we stop to try to explain unnecessary accusations to unnecessary people. It goes like this. People who are not interested in walking on water have nothing to say to the people who are leaving the boat. People who are content to stay in the boat, all they have is an opinion. The church is full of people who hold strongly held religious opinions but don't have the word of life. Because the word of life, and we should have time to get to this, it kind of relates to the second half of where I'd like to go tonight. The accumulation of Bible knowledge. Let me paint you a metaphor this way. Coffee machine. You put coffee grounds on the top, and you scoop it out in the morning and eat the coffee grounds. No, of course you don't, right? Oh, so a coffee machine. Well, I put the cup under and I push a button. Well, I'll just get hot water. Coffee machine, you put raw material in the top, you add two qualities, heat and water, and you have something suitable for consumption. Bible knowledge is like coffee grounds in our noggin. We need to put coffee grounds in our bean. But just because my head is full of Bible stuff doesn't mean I have anything to say to anybody about anything. Because until the cross is applied to my knowledge, the heat of the pressures of life, the water of the Holy Spirit, nobody is interested in what I have in my head. But most Christian stuff is knowledge in, knowledge out, knowledge in, knowledge out, knowledge in. And then we wonder why good truth becomes oppressive. You can be oppressive with truth. And then it sends you into a conflict because you know it's right. It's like, but it's not working for you. And so now, that which is meant for life has actually put you into conflict. Psychological conflict. Guys, you don't mind a quick story. The first church I was in, I'll make it quick, 13 years, was really, it went into an occultic thing. There were services. We rented an elementary school. There were services where I would go out into the playground, bury my head, not literally in the sand, but I would be under such emotional stress from what was going on that I'd be kneeling in the sandbox, banging my head into the sand, trying to process what was happening. Because you know I'm the one who's wrong, right? I mean, they would never misrepresent anything. They're the anointed ones. I'm just... There were services where I would go, and this is God is my witness, I would lock myself in the men's room, sit on the toilet and weep because I was under such emotional stress from what was going on in the meeting. That's good fertile ground for bitterness, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I didn't pass through that, but I couldn't point to the day, but I can remember when that hook was out of my heart. I let it go. And I could see that brother today and I could hug him. He's the guy that taught that my daughter was a bastard because my wife is divorced. He was the head of the Bible school where my 8, 9, and 10-year-old daughter would go to school and they would say, "You're such a nice girl. Too bad you're a bastard. What's it like living at home with an adulterer and an adulteress?" And now, honestly, I could hug that guy. Because you know what? What happens, my indictment goes to pathos, sympathy, understanding how broken he is, and how he was ministering. The word was right, but his filter system was broken.